All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I like to give all the honor, the praise, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rachakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered abroad. All right, this is the brother Barazal here with a lesson, and Lord willing, it's edifying. All right, so today's lesson will be entitled, This Walk is Serious. Okay, or something along those lines, right? Recently, you had a brother that was, got into an altercation, to say the least. Brother from Canada. I'm not gonna play the video. I may put it on the thumbnail. I'm sure most brothers, seen the video already, but I just wanted to kind of put in my input through the spirit, just going into, going on the highways and hedges, when we say that, we sacrificing our lives to do so, or putting our lives on the line, to do so, that's not to be taken lightly. It's not a joke. It's not something that we just say. We really going out there, putting our lives on the line for Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushua. All right. So I'm going to get in Romans 12:1. It says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Yahweh, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto Yahweh, which is your reasonable service. There you go. And that's what we do week in, week out, man. All right. Going out there, you got people who, come after us. All right, who hate us, want to cause harm to us because, the word, offends them. All right. And ultimately, this has to be one of the things that, we go through as servants of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. We're not exempt from, from harm, things, happening unto us, because we understand that, this is what the prophets of old went through. People think, just because, you preaching the word of the Lord that, we're not, any harm, we're not in any danger or any harm or, things like that, which we have faith that the Lord will deliver us, right? But that's a part of, the trial. There's a part of the tribulation, that we go through as the men of the Lord, the fire, of adversity, right? And let me get that actually real quick. 1 Peter 4 and start at 12. It say, Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial, which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. Yeah, kind. All right. The prophets of old went through it. All right. Yahushua, of course, Yahushua went through it. And as being, servants of Yahushua, followers of Yahushua, we're going to go through, similar, the similar troubles that he went through, just, being the only begotten son, of the Most High Yahweh. All right. Verse 13, it says, But rejoice inasmuch as you are partakers of Hamashiach's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, you may be glad also with exceeding joy. So we know that, whatever we, suffer, in this truth, there's a greater reward at the end, and what we go through is just, that's a part of, the work. All right. Getting in altercations, scuffles, even, throughout our camp, we've had, certain things happen, right? Altercations, right? Scuffles, right? Guns being flashed on us. All right. But hey, all through the spirit of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, brothers was okay. Brothers was delivered from those certain, situations that we went through. All right. So, let's get the next precept. It's going to be Ephesians 5:15. See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Yeah, kind. And, we got to continue to be more and more, circumspect, because of the times that we in. All right. As we getting closer to the end, closer to, the climax, of Jacob's trouble. All right. More and more people going to want to come against, the men of the Lord, the prophets, those who, believe in Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. All right. This truth ain't a joke. It ain't a game. All right. It's not just about, the honey. All right. This is a part of the bitterness as well. Us being scoffed at, scorned at. All right. People wanting to cause harm to us. All right. Call your jobs. All right. People wanting to put hell on you, divisions. Right. You being, separated from your family, friends, whatever the case may be. We all got to bear, our cross. You see? So this is just, this ain't, and another thing too, because we go into it, that's why, we consider the us being out there on the highways and hedges, likened unto the battlefield, right? Because you see these different camps, they come out there, with lawn chairs, right, with their women or children, things like that, like it's a, kickback, a picnic, a time to hang out. No. All right. Anything can happen out there. While we have faith, we believe that, of course, the angels are protecting us. All right. We still got to be circumspect. We got to treat it as, as such, right? That, as, us being out there, putting our lives on the line, for the sake of pushing out this truth, blowing that trumpet, and we're not sugarcoating nothing. All right. We're going out there rebuking. Okay. Directly going against this world. All right. And as we know, this world isn't with Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. All right. People cling on to Christianity, right? Traditions of men, Catholicism, Islam. All right. All these are accepted, throughout this world. But when it comes to, calling yourself a Hebrew Israelite, saying the Lord was a so-called black man, all right, saying that the so-called blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, are the, true children of Israel, the people have a problem with that. They get offended over that. All right. And ultimately, they turn into demons, right? Like that specific guy, that attacked the brother from Canada, right? With the, the fake firearm or whatever you would say. The spirit of the Lord prevailed. The spirit of the Lord, was definitely had that brother, and that brother, he did what he had to do. All right. He did exactly what he had to do. All right. And that's also, can be a faith booster as well, because, we see that, that could have went left. All right. But seeing that, just him just saying, being a brother, preaching in the names of Yahweh and Yahushua, right? Brother giving, double honors, right, to the apostles and elders at GMS. Okay. And, we were seeing a brother, right, like-minded brother, and he was delivered. All right. And that's a faith booster as well. All right. And that's why, the video, is, kind of, circulating as it is. Right. Many brothers doing lessons on it. All right. Because, hey, we coming into those times where, we got to rely on our faith. Right. The scriptures say the just shall live by faith. Let's get that. So yeah, this is Romans 1:17. All right, for therein the righteousness of Yahweh revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. Okay, and we believe that, you know, the Lord, you know, he gonna deliver us. You know, brothers gonna have spiritual power. You know, brothers, the spirit gonna be on brothers. You know, to do the right thing. You know, whatever they're up against. You know, because we're coming into a time like never before seen, as the scripture saith, right? Jeremiah 30:7, Daniel 12:1. Okay, so we gotta you know, ultimately have our spirits ready. Okay, get one more precept, and I'm gonna close it out. So it's Matthew 5:10. It says, "Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." There you go. So, you know, we coming into a time where, you know, we'll be persecuted. And that guy, you know, he could have very well been an agent, right? Agent provocateur, you know, been set up, you know, in order to, you know, demonize, you know, the ministry. All right, demonize the, you know, the brothers, you know, the prophets. All right. You know, a brother, you know, out there on his own, you know, hey, you know, that's how this devil operate, man, you know. And, you know, the brother, he handled it, you know, very well, you know, calm, collected, all right. And, you know, when the opportunity presented itself, you know, he neutralized the threat. See? Matthew 5:11. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. All right. And that's what it is, you know. People call us, you know, they say that we, you know, worship a skin color. All right. You know, stupid things like that. All right. You know, they say, hate group. All right. You know, people just constantly, you know, demonizing. All right. And especially Jake. Right. You know, you got the, you know, because the spirit is on the elder, you know, Manasseh-made, you know, putting out the videos of, you know, just Jake just straight up scoffing, you know, at the truth, you know, and it's mainly Jake, you know, because, you know, that's who this truth is for, right? To wake up, you know, the Israelites. All right. But we understand that, you know, the majority of our people, you know, they just gonna have to, you know, be put to death and come back in the kingdom, right? Receive whatever judgment, you know, they gonna get. All right. From Yahweh Shai, and hey, you know, that's just what it is. All right. Now, verse 12, rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Yeah, so none of this is new. You know, the Christians think that just because, you know, they're, you know, the, you know, more popular or whatever, you know, you got, billions of Christians or whatever the number is, right? You know, that they have the truth. No, the prophets, you know, was beat up, you know, put to jail, you know, put to death. All right. Was hated by you know, a lot of people. All right. So, you know, and we're in the lot of the prophets today. Okay. You know, nobody's looking to, you know, do any harm to a regular Christian. No, that's what's accepted. You know, worst pagan holidays. You know, not keeping the law. All right, Jesus. Right. That's what's accepted. But when you say the name Yahweh Shai, that's not accepted. All right. When you say that, you know, the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans are the true Israelites, that's not accepted. When you say, you know, the law is not done away with, that's not accepted. All right. So that just go to show you, you know, who got it and who don't. All right. And you know, the plantation Christianity, man, that's been through. All right. But, you know, that'll do it with the lesson. And Lord willing, it was edifying. So with that, I like to give all the praise and glory unto Yahweh by Hashem, Yahushua, by Hashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Shalom.